Ed, great to see you as always, and thank you for taking a bit of time to come and tell us your story. It's really interesting stuff that you're doing, so I really appreciate that. To kick things off, let's start off with the mission. Tell people what you're trying to achieve.
In life or with my business,
Well,
Paul?
with the business, really. I mean, you can tell people about what you want to do with your life if you want, but this is really about building global businesses, isn't it? So tell us
Of
about
course.
that.
So I think in all honesty, like what we're trying to achieve, we want to help hospitality businesses run a more profitable operation, and it's as simple as that. That is what we want to do. We're trying to help operators run more streamlined business so they can have a much more profitable operation.
Yeah. And what is it exactly? I mean, I get the logic of that, particularly after COVID. I mean, a lot of hospitality people got badly hit, and helping them be a bit more efficient is good for their profitability. So it seems to me a good thing. What is it for you that inspires you? Because it's a tough job being the CEO. I mean, what is it inspires you to keep plugging away to achieve that mission?
I suppose I've lived and breathed it firsthand. My background is I started a chain of coffee shops from scratch, from being the barista on the floor, all the way up to having 10 locations in the UK and a franchise business in the Middle East, and then going on to selling that business to a big American coffee chain. You know, I've and doing that all through COVID, I think was a huge stress
Yeah.
on me. And I wasn't particularly well equipped to be able to handle a lot of the challenges that I faced. You're learning on the job the whole time. And I really struggled with it. I was not the best operator. I was not the best at marketing, but you have to do all these things as you're growing a business and you're figuring stuff out, especially in the F&B space. And I really struggled with it. So for me, it's just like it is a really big problem that I've lived and breathed for half of my working career. And I'm really passionate about being able to solve that problem and help a lot of other operators, hopefully, hopefully guide them in the right direction to be able to run their business more efficiently and enjoy their lives more.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I totally get that. I mean, and I think it's a really important thing, actually. I mean, people might say, well, that's not an important thing, but it's pretty important for those businesses, isn't it? Let me ask you about the kind of global piece. Tell me about the moment when you thought this business, Edify, could have an impact globally. I know you're not at the end of the journey, you're on the journey, but when did you first realize that this could be something really quite significant?
I think pretty early on, to be honest, but I suppose when we were building it and when we started getting customers in a whole load of different regions that we thought had never heard of us, I think that's when we realized actually, look, this can be a really big global solution to a big global problem. And I think the really interesting thing about the market that we're in terms of quick service retail, the coffee sector, is that the way that these businesses operate across the globe tends to be pretty similar. The way that you sell a coffee in the UK is very similar to the way you sell it in the US. There are obviously slight nuances between them. But what that does do is it makes the business very applicable to a much wider audience. And I think that's really exciting because if we can solve problems in the US, the UK, the Middle East, Asia, Australasia, that becomes really exciting from a global opportunity perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you realized that this is something that you could take global, what was I mean, when you think I can do this, what was the kind of crux problem that you would have to resolve to achieve that goal? I mean, what's the kind of the big issue that you need to kind of get through?
The big issue in terms of kind of looking at the business from a global impact, or the
Yeah.
kind of the big issue for operators?
No, in terms of your business becoming global.
That's a very good question. I think I think the first thing is just being really focused on where do you want to start going global. Which are the markets that you want to start penetrating, and where specifically in those markets, who are the customers that you want to target, and being really focused on that. And if you can do that and expand from that, I think that's where we can like really make a big impact. I think the alternative, which we kind of tried, was this like, let's try a massive kind of not strategic approach to being able to focus on these customers. And I think that's where we got definitely got it wrong.
Right. Okay. And I mean, I know you'll have made mistakes along the way. I mean, all entrepreneurs are that. I mean, what is it though that you think has made your business, because it is becoming very successful? I mean, what is it that you think that makes your business in particular successful?
So I think there are two things that I think we focus on internally that we think makes us successful. I think firstly is the perception and the reality that you know we're building this product because of a lot of the pain points and frustrations that I have felt, and I think that comes across in the way that we talk to our customers, the way that we appear online, the way that the reputation that we have. So I think that that is one piece. I think the second piece is all about the team that we built. And running your first business, you make a lot of mistakes in terms of the
Yeah.
people that you bring around you. You also learn what's good, you learn what's not good. And I think second time round, it makes it a bit easier to identify what are the kind of key traits and personalities of your team members that you want in your business that can help drive you towards the output that we want to achieve. And I think that's, for me, have been the two kind of key things. We can't build a great business without a great team around us. And I think, being really honest and transparent with everyone that comes in about what we're trying to achieve, the level of work that we're trying to do, the attitude that everyone wants to bring, gets everyone on the same page really, really quickly. And having very clearly defined standards where everyone kind of understands that this is the way that we want to work is really, really important.
Yeah. And has it taken a long time to achieve that? I mean, you're moving quite quickly, I think, aren't you?
We're moving quickly. It's. I don't think you ever reach a certain endpoint of that. You're always constantly building the team, evolving the team. The team is changing as you grow. The way that you work needs to change as you grow, and you need to be adaptive to that. And I think again, finding the right people that want to join you on that journey and be adaptive to that change is super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I mean, you're successful now, pretty successful. I mean, were there ever moments when you thought this may not work out quite as well as I'd hoped? I mean, you've had those kind of experiences along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think I definitely don't feel like I'm successful. I've had a bit of success in my career, but I still think there's a whole load more
Yeah.
to achieve and a whole load more problems to solve. And there have been lots of close moments for sure, for sure. But I think the main thing around that is actually just being really, really clear and understanding again how you can solve your own internal problems.
Could you
Like,
give us an example of something that has given you a few?
I think I like pure like cash management in the early days. I think I started my first business at 25, and I didn't really have a clue what I was doing back then. And budgeting, VAT, forecasting, you needed to learn those things pretty quickly. And that was the big struggle that I had in my early days. I mean, your sales were going through the roof, and at the end of the month, you tended not to have a huge amount of cash in the bank, and I never really had a huge amount of visibility why, and that was
Yeah.
the reason and the kind of frustration that I felt, which kind of uh, born out Edify.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that, isn't it? I mean, I think people, I mean, the CEO's job. I always think of it in kind of these kind of companies, your kind of companies like yours. It's chief everything officer, not chief executive officer, because you have to learn about how everything works to make sure that it all works properly, don't you? Which makes it quite a challenging, quite I think it's quite challenging. Job. It's quite a challenging job, particularly when you're trying to scale globally, because there's just nowhere to hide. I mean, do you? I mean, what's your take on the role of the CEO? I mean, how do you see that role?
I think the role varies person to person,
Hmm.
and you need to be aware of everything that's going on in the business. But there are certain things that you're really good at naturally and that you really like doing. And I think really focusing on those parts of jobs. So for me, that is on the sales side, it's something that I really enjoy. It's something that I'm good at. On the technical side, I bring in a huge amount of expertise on our technical side. And we've got a great engineering team, great principal engineers. And for me, that is something that I need to be super aware of, but I need to be able to trust my team to be able to execute that. And I think just being really, really clear on what are the things that you are really good at and really focusing on making those even better, because that's where you, in my view, will completely outshine your competition.
Yeah. Yeah. Focusing on your strengths, really, isn't it? I mean, and were there any particular bits that you found challenging about the job?
About being a founder and CEO,
Hmm.
the most challenging things I think is mainly when you feel. I think really when you feel you're wanting to grow, you're under a lot of pressure to grow, just from ourselves and what we want to achieve. And I think being able to finding the right people is always the biggest challenge. And I think that's the thing. You always have this conundrum of like, look, do we need to find the right person now, or do you want to find the right? Do you need to wait a bit, and really balancing that, because it just, onboarding new people takes a lot of time. Offboarding people takes time. Getting people up to speed on the product, getting people up to speed on what we do, how we work. And if you get the right people early on, it just makes such a huge difference. They set the culture, they set the tone, they understand the ways of working, and then everyone new coming in lives and breathes that. And I think that for me is just, if you can get that right, more often than you get it right, you don't get it right, it becomes, way better. And that's for me is just, how do we focus on making sure we get the right people in the right places.
Yeah. And it's critical. I mean, it's a very interesting point you make. I mean, I think that's absolutely critical. You've got to get the right people in the business, in the right, the right people in the right seats, as it were. Because if you don't, I mean, the corollary is, if you don't get the right people and you get them in the wrong seats, I mean, just got a disaster on your hands, haven't you? So it seems to me to be fairly important thing to do. One of the interesting things that I come across a lot is this idea that CEOs should work in the business, but also should spend time standing back working on the business. I mean, that's the cliche, are you working on the business or in the business?
Yeah,
What's your take on that? I mean, how do you manage that issue?
I think you have to balance it. To be honest, you have to be able to do both. You have to have that helicopter view over the business. What do we want to do over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years? You have to have that high level vision, but you also have to be really good at getting into the detail and really understanding actually where are the problems, what are the blockers day to day that are preventing me from getting to where we want to achieve over the next six months, 12 months, 3 years. And so you have to have the really good ability to be able to have that kind of bigger picture view, and then be able to dive into the detail on a regular basis. So I would say 100% you need to be better, really good at both. And then, throughout the year, you will be doing more of one and less of the other, and vice versa, depending on
And
what's happening within the business.
do you structure the way you do that? Do you have blocks of time that you take out to think about where you're going and stuff? I mean, how does that work in practice?
In all honesty, no. I would like to say yes. We have a very well structured approach. We've got a whole framework behind it. It's not the reality is we don't do that, and that's, I think, mainly because of the way that I like to work. I think we have these like clear goals, we have these clear targets of what we want to achieve, and if we are seeing like consistent blockers to be able to do that, we need to be able to focus our resource on making sure we can fix them. And oftentimes you don't think they're going to be blockers. Blockers come up, and they are unscheduled blockers, basically.
Yeah, 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 and they keep happening, don't they? I mean, you get one thought, and then another one pops up. Really, I think it's a bit like whack-a-mole sometimes. But let me ask you about the other side of the coin. I mean, has there ever been a time when you think perhaps I should have been a bit bolder? Perhaps I should have stuck my neck out a bit further. I mean, have you had those sorts of experiences?
I think so. Yes. I mean, there are
An
definitely. I
example?
can't. I don't know whether I've got any particular examples of when I should have stuck my neck out. I think the two or three times that I have stuck my neck out, it has worked really well. An example of this would be like during COVID, we ended up buying four coffee shops when I was a coffee shop operator, because I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to kind of grow the business. And that worked out really well. And then there are other times when I was like, we should be going and trying opening new shops in different locations across the country. And that didn't work particularly well. And so I think sticking your neck out, like I've definitely learned that I used to stick my neck out a lot without really thinking about the consequences. Now it's more of a like, let's weigh up. I'm happy to stick my neck out. I'm happy to take a risk, but let's be really calculated in the way that we do it. and let's assess what the optionality is. And I've learned that from a lot of other people in terms of you can't just always punt. You punt knowing the information that you know, and knowing the information you don't know as well is really important. And you take an approach on that. And in my view, that's I don't think that's risky. That's you've assessed the options with the information that you have at the time, and you go for it, or you don't go for it, and you pick a direction. You can't do everything, and you need to understand which is the direction that you want to go in.
Yeah, I mean, I like Richard Branson's point that he makes, which is about always protecting against the downside.
What
No
did he
one.
say, Paul?
Well, I mean, I can't remember the exact wording, but basically, he was saying when you stick your neck out, make sure that you think about the downside. So if it does go horribly wrong, how do you manage that? I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of plan for, hope for the best, plan for the worst kind of idea, which I think is quite a helpful way about a helpful way of thinking about those decisions.
yeah.
Um, because we are, I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of the entrepreneurs I meet, they're inherently positive, they're inherently optimistic. They've got this kind of action bias. They're good at getting on with things, and they always think it's going to go right. And of course, it doesn't always go right. So let me
Agreed.
go on, after you.
I Paul, just quick. I would like, yeah, I think and that's very much my attitude. Like you've got to get up and go.
Yeah,
You've got to have an optimistic attitude. I think that being said, sometimes it can be very very challenging to be able to push through that and actually think, you know, with all the information I know now, what is the down? You've got to be really aware of what that downside risk can be.
yeah. Have you ever sort of made a decision that has led to something that has really shifted you out of your comfort zone?
In terms of,
I mean, what about new markets when you've gone outside the UK? I mean, what about has that pushed you? I mean, that often gets people out of their comfort zone.
I think to be honest, I think every CEO or entrepreneur or founder is constantly on outside their comfort zone. I think that's what it's getting used to being outside the comfort zone. You're always trying new things. And I think that the exciting thing about starting your own business is that everything that we did last year is different to everything that we're doing this year. Yes, there's a whole lot of repeatability things, but the growth that we had last year is very different to the growth that we have this year. It's going to be different to the growth we have next year, different to the team dynamic. And so that comfort zone of being comfortable in things that you've never done before is really, really important. So I think the idea of being out of your comfort zone, I feel like I'm kind of always out of my comfort zone. And so you need to be able to figure out how to kind of best utilize that feeling, I suppose.
Yeah, somebody said to me, I can't remember who, but somebody said to me, it's about being comfortable, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It seems to me, because
Yeah.
it doesn't go away. Is my take on that. Let me.
No.
You picked up the importance of your team. I mean, lots of people have talked about that, and for obvious reasons. If you've got a great team, you're going to make more progress. I mean, how do you keep? I mean, when things get challenging, I mean, which is can be often. How do you look after your team? I mean, how do you keep people motivated? How do you keep people focused on the right things? What's your take?
I mean, I think we want to hire the right people that want, we're still a relatively small business in the grand scheme of things. And we want to hire the right people that want to go on that journey. And in order to understand that, when things get tough, that's just part of the journey. That's part of what we're trying to do. It's part of the problem we're trying to solve. When you give people ownership of their section, you give people ownership and responsibility, they want to be able to work through that. Like solving these problems is really fulfilling. It's really exciting. And I think in the challenging moments, it's really important that they're able to own that. And I think that's incredibly rewarding. But again, it all comes down to you need to be able to find the right type of person that thrives in that environment. And for us, that's really, really important. And understanding how to find those is we've still got to find out how we hire for those traits. But
I was about to ask you about that. I mean, it's one thing to say we'll find people that thrive in those environments. It's another thing to do, isn't it? I mean, what's your take? I mean, what's working in relation to that? I mean, how are you approaching that?
honestly, I think I know this sounds like pretty basic, but finding really smart people that really like a challenge and like to be able to push themselves. And Again, that can be in any aspect of life, whether it be personal, whether it be career, whether it be something that they've done. It's just being able to, in the interview process, do you get a sense and do you get a feel for, do you think that, when stuff gets tough, that they'll be able to like push through and handle it and be able to do that? And that's, yeah, I think that's, for me, in this early stage of our business, that's kind of what we're looking for. I think we want to surround ourselves with super smart people that want to solve problems,
yeah,
and that are happy to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're great when you get them, and they or keep them.
They're great when you get them. I know they
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
They're great.
yeah. Let me ask you about this change piece. I mean, my experience is that businesses just constantly evolve. I mean, what's your view on that? And has your business evolved a lot as you've gone into different markets? I mean, tell us about that.
Yeah, 100%. I think the evolution of business, the evolution of your business, with all this new technology that's coming out. I mean, there's constant change, and there's constant change in your own internal workflows. There's constant change in the product that we're building. There's constant change in the way that we sell to customers, the way that customers use our products changes market to market. What they find most valuable changes, and I think being able to understand that change, measure I suppose, measure those changes and then be able to like put in a strategy, be able to like hopefully execute these changes is going to be super important.
Yeah. And one of the things that interests me about that is in the global context is that, I mean, doing business in Singapore is very different from doing business in Berlin, for example. I mean, what's your take on the kind of cultural aspect to being in different markets? I mean, the kind of the world of coffee. I know from my own experience, going into a coffee shop in France, very different to going into a coffee place in Italy, and yet they're next door to each other. I mean, what's your take on the kind of cultural stuff? Because that must be quite an issue with the kind of customers you work with, is it?
I think no, I think in all honesty, I think no matter which market you're in, if you can clearly articulate how you're solving a problem for a customer or a potential customer, that for me seems to resonate really well. If you can identify what their problems are, if you can relate to them on a personal level about the way that they work, what their business does, it doesn't really matter what culture. You've just got to be able to identify how to relate to them. And I think if you know what their problems are, if you can relate to those problems, if you can communicate them really well, that's where we see actually we get a really good response. And that could be in the Middle East, that could be in the UK, that could be Europe, that could be the US. And I don't think that necessarily changes depending on your culture. I think, after you've identified those opportunities, potentially, business processes may change, but in terms of really identifying how to help these operators, I think you've just got to be really, really good at articulating the problem that they're facing.
Yeah, and I guess if that problem is sufficiently painful, they're going to be really grateful for some help, aren't they? Let me ask you about market entry. Some companies kind of do things very ad hoc. Some companies spend an awful lot of time developing a market entry strategy and raising money. And what's your take on the process of going into a new jurisdiction?
So because we're a software product, the way that we can operate from anywhere in the world. We don't have to have necessarily boots on the ground. But whenever we enter a new market, we really identify one or two kind of key customers within that market, really focus on that, understand the potential nuances of that specific market, and then understand if this is something that we want to go into longer term. And so we kind of, I suppose, put our toe in the water first, and then really understand if this is something, knowing that the opportunity is there before we go into that market, but really understand actually once we're in, are there some of these nuances that we have unforeseen that actually are not going to make the business work in that specific market. The markets that we've gone into at the moment, the ones that we're focusing on, the Middle East, the US, UK, it's been quite clear that there is a huge opportunity in these markets, and actually the nuances, the local market nuances, are not insurmountable. So yeah.
And do you talked about identifying some kind of key customers? Do you work with them to expand in that market, or is that just to test the way it works before? I mean, how does that play out? I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
people I ask, the reason I ask is a lot of people
no,
talk about partnering.
yeah, no, it's a good question. I think so. What we've done is we have, I mean, we kind of partner with customers, and so we identify one or two customers and go, look, this is something that we want to do. Bring them on the journey with us. They get a lot of influence in terms of the product roadmap, and they can help guide us within that local market. And but again, we need to find fast growing businesses that want to do this with us, that are frustrated with their own existing tech stack, that are frustrated with their own operations and their own internal workflows. And that's where we think in these new markets, we get one or two key customers, and we can get it working really well for them. That's where we see, there's a massive opportunity beyond that.
And have you encountered any particular kind of ethical or environmental issues that have created problems? I mean, I was talking to somebody who was talking about doing business in Pakistan and some of the problems he'd experienced around kind of corruption and stuff. I mean, have you come across those sorts of things on your travels?
I would like no, sadly not. No, we have we are a software product at the moment that is hopefully helping a lot of people to run their businesses way better. And that's at the moment, no, we haven't come across any of those problems.
Yeah, good. Well, that's maybe something to look forward to as you get bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I mean, these things pop up when you least expect them, don't they?
Yeah.
Tell me about the journey. I mean, you've talked a lot about what you're doing. So, I mean, tell us a bit about the journey and what have you learnt? I mean, you've been on a really interesting, I mean, it's a fascinating journey that you've been on. I mean, I remember when we first started talking about it. I mean, it's a really interesting process that you've been through. What have you learned from that? When you look back, what would you say the big things are that you've learned?
I suppose my journey's been very varied. I suppose just to give an overview of that journey, I left university, went to work in the US as a manny, fell in love with the whole hospitality scene out there, moved back to the UK, started a chain of coffee shops, grew a chain of coffee shops, sold the chain of coffee shops, ended up working for the acquirer, which was amazing, and then have now started this software business. And so I would say that journey has been hugely varied. But I think the big thing, in my very short but very career, I think it's just, again, it's all around the people. You have to really understand what drives each individual, not only within your team, but who you're selling to, how you're selling to them. And I think if you can understand the individual, it's really important. You can get the best out of that individual, and you also then create like really exciting relationships. You can, for us in what we're trying to do, it's a very customer focused approach. And that was the same when we had coffee shops, the same now we have a software business. How can we help our customers? And how can we identify their pain points? And the way that we do that is by building great relationships with them. And if we can focus on that for us is just a massive opportunity for us.
And when you say, I mean, when you talk about building a great relationship with customers, I mean, yeah, I hear that a lot from people. I mean, what does that mean to you? When you say you've got a great relationship, what would a great relationship look like to you?
I think two things really. First one is that they feel that they can give you really honest feedback about the product, about their experience, and they feel that their input is having a positive impact on the wider product. So I think that is really important. And I think the second one is that you have, being able to have a great personal relationship with these people. These people have taken a punt on us, in the same way that I had a coffee shop, people could choose where they spend their money. They come to your coffee shop, they come to a different coffee shop, but they've chosen to come to yours. And these customers that in the software world, they've chosen to spend their money with us as opposed to another operator, or not spend money at all. And to be able to, I think for them, it's a huge amount of respect, and we take what we do incredibly seriously, and we want to be able to really solve their problems for them. And I think, it does take, it is a personal relationship. We're dealing with lots of customers that, have huge businesses that really want to build their businesses into massive global empires. And that's really exciting. And if we can do anything to help them, it definitely is a personal relationship in that front.
Yeah, it's so important. And Is there anything that you, when you look back on that journey, is there anything that you know now that you wish you'd known then? I mean, you've mentioned the importance of the team piece, but what about other things?
Everything takes longer than you think it should do, would be my take. Um, and but that shouldn't stop me from growing, pushing through,
Yeah.
challenging barriers. Yeah, but it does. Everything takes longer than you think it should do.
Yeah. And do you have a view on why that happens? I mean, lots of people talk to me about that. Is it that we have totally unrealistic expectations about what can be done, or is it that things just go wrong and you have to take more time to deal with them? I mean, what's your take on why that happens?
I think probably a combination of two. And you have a certain set of information at the time you make these decisions, and even you have these known knowns and these known unknowns, and then you have the unknown unknowns, and that's the thing that I think tend to get in the way of fast, I think, growth.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly understand your point about things never going fast enough. I mean, I feel the same way about that. And lots of people I speak to say that. And when you think about what you've done, I mean, what achievements are you most proud of so far? I mean, I know you've got achievements that are coming your way, I'm sure, but what are you most proud of so far?
I think building building my chain of coffee shops and then selling the chain of coffee shops. I think that was an amazing thing that I'm super proud of. We had an amazing team. We had up to 120 team members across our locations, and being able to sell the business was I felt like a huge achievement at the time in a very tough economic environment. And I think building a hospitality brand, a bricks and mortar hospitality brand, is incredibly challenging. Being able to sell it is doesn't happen that often. And so I think that was something that in my career I'm super proud of. But yeah, I'd say that was probably my career highlight so far. And I hope there are more highlights to come. So
Yeah, I'm
we will
sure there
see.
will be.
Yeah, I hope there are more highlights.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Selling the business. I mean, when I first sold my first business, I thought I was a genius. I mean, the truth is, I was in the right place at the right time. But nonetheless, it gave me a big boost. And if you were to offer some advice to people that are just starting out on a journey like yours, I mean, what would you say? What would you tell them?
Go for it. Just absolutely go for it. I think a lot of people get caught up when right in the early days. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Looking at the risks. I think in those really early days, you just ignore the risks. In the really early days, if you really have found a problem that people are truly like want to solve, that for me is really important.
And it's
And
fun, isn't it? It's fun building.
it's fun. It's very fun, but I do think it's a lot of it is a lot of hard work. You've got to be willing to put the hard work in. I suppose in everything in life is like that. However, I just think, yeah, it's incredibly rewarding when it goes well and you put a huge amount of work in. I think that's the one thing that I realized is
Yeah,
when you work incredibly hard and you get a result that you want, it's incredibly rewarding.
yeah, yeah. Because you own it all. That's the thing. You own the experience, the process. If it's you own that, and getting that right
Yeah.
is tremendous, isn't it? Let me ask you a couple of final questions before we wind up. Um, you've talked a lot about the journey. I mean, tell us about one or two of the exciting things that you've got on the horizon. I know you've got big ambitions. I mean, give us a clue about that.
I suppose from a product perspective, what we're doing at the moment and the pace of change with all of this new AI technology, it's incredible. And I think being able to adopt that both from an internal perspective in terms of our own internal workflows, and then from an external perspective, how can we implement this to help our customers solve their problems is really exciting. So there's a lot more to come from the adoption of AI within our own business and for our customers. So I think that is something that we're really excited about. And then also we're working with a lot of big enterprise, large scale businesses to help solve a lot of their problems. And I think when you've got 1,000 locations, 1,500 locations, 2,000 locations in your business, these small marginal changes to your day-to-day operation make a massive difference. And I think for us, that is what we're really excited about. How do we identify these key pain points in these operators' businesses, find a solution for them, implement the solution, and see the results. It's super, super exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you one last question, which is not so much about your business, but it touches on the point that you've just raised, which is around the impact of AI. I mean, what's your take on the way AI is going to change your world, your industry, your sector? I mean, it's changing very rapidly. It's unfolding as we speak. I mean, what's your take on what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, we run a software business, and so it is going to drastically change the way that software operates, for sure, for sure, for sure, for sure. And I think if you don't think like that,
You're
I
doing
don't
it.
think that's necessary. Yeah, no, I think that is the right thing. I think the adoption of it is getting more and more and more. I think it's just getting the models are getting better and better. It's incredibly exciting. The amount of investment that's gone into it is incredibly exciting. But at the end of the day, you still need to know and understand what the problem is you are solving. And like that is the bottom line. How are we solving a problem for our customers? And if we can use this amazing new technology to solve it better, quicker, faster, that is like the bottom line. And then you need to be able to sell it. At the end of the day, we're selling this product, we're selling this service to other humans, but we have to be able to use AI to streamline that and make that way better.
Exciting times.
It is very, very exciting times. There's a lot going on. We're halfway through the year. We've got another 6 months to go. 2025 has been good, and it's going to get better.
Absolutely. Ed, thank you for taking a bit of time.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
It's been great to talk to you, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Likewise. See you, Paul.
Cheers, Ed. Bye bye.